Are we committed to cold opens now?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're the editor, so ultimately we're committed to what you decide to put before the music.
I've been listening to some Taylor Swift this week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
What
I'm
a mood.
31.
So's she, right? So
Oh yeah, good point.
Taylor Swift's like my age.
Me and Taylor going through the same motions. You know what, Anti-Hero? She came out last year. Good tune. I like Anti-Hero. It's a good song. Have you ever really listened to the lyrics? Because there's a line in it where she says, "Sometimes I feel like everybody is a sexy baby."
What?
And I can't. I don't like it. I don't get it.
Taylor, can you explain that to us?
Friend of the podcast, Taylor Swift. If you're listening, hon,
So-
if you can get in touch.
Does that mean you're a Swiftie then, Liam?
I don't know. I might be. I'm getting there. I've been listening to a lot of Olivia
Oh yeah,
Rodrigo. Whatever she's called.
Olivia Rodrigo. Yeah.
Rodrigo. She's good. I like her. And it's Spotify DJ. Have you used Spotify DJ?
No, what's
No.
that? Does it just
Do you use Spotify?
Yeah, does it
Yeah.
just spout random music at you that you think that it'll think you like?
They describe it as an AI powered DJ, and it uses a synthesized AI voice, and I hate that bit of it. But it
Wait, I just imagine the AI voice being like, "Come on, everybody!" like an actual DJ.
I wish it had that much energy. It's actually more like
Liam Richardson, get down.
Oh god, terrifying.
Irritatingly, it's more like, "Hey Liam, this is your DJ X," and
no.
it can't quite pronounce the names of things, and it keeps recommending me Magic by Coldplay every single day. It'll be like, "Here's a Wednesday vibe for you," and it's Magic by Coldplay. Or he'll be like, here's what you normally listen to on a Thursday morning, Liam, and it's just 5 white noise tracks back to back.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes he gives me a nice little mix of new music, and I've been listening to a bit of Taylor Swift. And yeah, you know what? I think this Taylor Swift person pretty good. One to keep an eye on, let me tell you.
Oh. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I'm not a
Not
Swiftie.
a Swiftie?
I'm into the Swiftie drama, but I'm not a Swiftie girl.
Ooh, what's the Swiftie drama?
Oh, all the exes and all the drama around it. Ooh, I love it.
Oh, okay, it's quite
To
exciting.
be honest, I like watching Swifties react to it because they're obviously
Right,
very
okay.
into it and heartfelt. And I'm just like, this is amazing. If only I had an inkling of that.
If you were to be hugely obsessed with a band or a musical artist, who would it be? To the degree that Swifties are into Taylor Swift.
Oh, this is a good question.
Just
Do you
dropped it on
want the Rebecca Law?
Yes!
I probably,
Always,
as a
always.
teenager, I was probably into Green Day that much, which
Oh,
dates me intensely specifically. But there you go.
No, it dates me as well.
Yeah, it's very much our era. Yeah, I think I probably was at 14, but it was
Okay.
one of the ways of being a nerd that I did actually grow out of, which is not to say that I think
Oh,
that you
really?
should grow out of your nerdery, but you cannot take every childish thing into adulthood, and being celebrity obsessed is a thing that I just kind
Oh.
of stopped having.
I thought you just meant Green Day, not the cult of celebrity. I thought you were like, oh yeah, I don't carry my childish
I
thing.
still like
Green Day.
I still like the music of Green Day. I still enjoy their music. Although I'm 3 albums behind, I've realised lately, and I'm like, geez, I need to catch up. But no, I mean, the whole, I don't really have celebrity obsessions anymore. It's one of the things I just stopped doing when I was about 18 or 19. So
Yeah, that's completely fair.
yeah. I'm still
okay.
a massive nerd for everything else, but some things you just have to drop.
yeah, we had that conversation of what celebrities would you stand in a queue for? How long would you stand in a queue for?
Oh, yeah,
While
yeah.
we were thinking of of Hayden standing in all the queues of Critical Role, and I honestly couldn't think of any celebrity I would do that for, or any figure, or any writer, author, TV
I
person.
know, right? I
couldn't.
mean, this was when we were at Comic-Con, and there were actors there who I have really liked for a long time, and I was like, I'm not standing in that queue, though. I'd rather hang out with you guys and look at
Yeah.
silly merch, rather than, you know.
Hold on, does that mean that the real celebrities who would have queued for is each other?
Oh,
Is that cute or narcissistic? I can't
I don't know, I wouldn't queue to meet
Maybe.
me. I'd queue to meet you guys.
I'd queue to meet you.
I mean, we've hopped on trains for hours to meet each other.
Yeah,
Very true.
That's
Yeah,
true.
very, very
That's
true.
So there it is.
I'll tell you what, though, an awful turnout for the first Indieventure fan meet, let me tell you.
Yeah, what the fuck, guys? Where were you all?
Hello and welcome to Indieventure, a podcast about indie games. Blimey O'Reilly, it's episode 4, and this week we're going to attempt to answer a question we've been collectively pondering for some time. What does success look like for indie games? Now, quantifying success is a nebulous, difficult task at the best of times, but in the world of indies, doing so is even more challenging. Is success measured financially, critically, or is it something more qualitative instead? Should indies be evaluated in comparison to their AAA counterparts? And by doing so, does that impact our perception of what an indie game even is? I'm Liam Richardson, and this week I'll be deploying my best vocal fry to trick you into thinking I'm a serious journalist who has never admitted to wanting to eat a pine cone off the ground on this very podcast. I'm also joined, as ever, by my two very serious co-hosts, Rebecca Jones.
Hello.
And Rachel Watts.
Hello. Push his glasses up nose.
I like this, yes.
I'm actually the only one of us three who doesn't have glasses.
Yeah.
So I had to...
That's a good point,
Yeah,
actually.
you have to imagine it.
Does that mean that you're the jock of the group?
I'm the Chad, yes.
Yeah, I think it's fair to describe Rachel as the jock of the group.
Yeah, I am absolutely 100% the Chad jock of the group. Yeah.
Do you know that meme of the three people walking to the music? Oh, this is such a specific terminally online thing.
No,
The
what is it?
Dr. Livesey, Dr. Livesey walk. Have you seen this?
No,
okay.
Doctor...
About to...
Because I kind of think they have us energy.
This! Oh my god, I have seen this.
Oh yeah, I've seen variations on this. Yeah, would you believe I've seen an
Yeah.
Ace Attorney variant?
The
on
Ace
this
Attorney
anyway.
one, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, you're the one in the middle, Rachel. You're the Chad of the trio, I think.
I definitely am.
To Rebecca and I.
Yeah,
Hello,
I can
how are
see
you two
that.
doing? Are you doing all right? It's nice to be back.
Yeah.
I mean, bloody hell. The podcast is out now. People have been listening to it. Reception's been
Yes.
amazing so far.
Oh,
Huge thank you to everyone who's been listening. Do really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so
thank
much.
you.
And we also saw each other as well.
We saw each other. We went to London and we met up, and that was pretty bloody nice, wasn't it?
It was great.
Had a
It
nice
was
little adventure.
So
It was nice.
We bullied each other into buying embarrassing merch at Comic-Con. I think that is
Yes.
my outstanding
Yes.
memory of the day.
I mean, speak for yourself. My Leon S. Kennedy baby girl pin badge is one of my most treasured items, I
It's
think.
fantastic.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah, what a find. Also, we really should have got that mouse mat that had like the booby mouse mat. It was like Babs. Who pointed that out? From Chicken
Babs
Run?
from Chicken
Oh my
Run.
god.
Yeah.
Why is
I
that
totally
thing?
forgot
Why
about
does it
that.
exist?
I think we should have got it. I do. I think
I
about
think,
it often.
We should have walked up in 3, please.
Yeah, amazing.
Oh,
We should
God.
see if that seller's online and get some.
Oh, we actually should. Yeah.
That's bound to be online. You can find any unhinged things online.
Could we request 3 Babs booby mouse mats for review consideration, please?
Oh no.
My favourite indie game of 2023 was the Babs from Chicken Run booby mouse mat.
Oh, no.
Spoilers for an upcoming episode.
Rachel, jeez.
Well, we haven't got it. We need to order them. Maybe they're a letdown.
They can't be a letdown. How can something that beautiful be a letdown?
I want to know if it gives me good wrist support, Liam. I want to know if her
you were
cleavage.
gonna say
Well,
goosebumps.
okay, but if her butt gives good wrist support. What was it? Was it her
It
butt?
was eggs.
Oh, it was eggs.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't think Babs lays eggs in the course of Chicken Run's runtime. Chicken runtime, if you will.
Oh my god.
Stop.
It's terrible.
Wait,
It's been a
wait.
long day.
No, because they all do at the bit. I didn't really want to get
Do
into
they?
Chicken Run. You know what? There's Chicken Run too, and I was like, why?
It's out at Christmas.
Okay.
Weirdly, right? My sister messaged us and she didn't say, "Can we see you for Christmas?" She said, "Can we see you to watch Chicken Run 2 as a family?" It's the only plan I have with my family in December
that's
is to
quite
watch Chicken
sweet.
Run 2.
The figurines went to the premiere. Did you see that?
No, I
The
didn't
actual
see that.
figurines of the chickens went to the premiere, and Aardman dressed them up in like suits and stuff, and
That's
people took
cute.
pictures of them.
That is cute.
Quite
though.
like that, actually.
Yeah.
Quite into that as an idea.
Still want to
I
eat them.
can't tell if Babs, I'm
Throwback.
Googling furiously, does Babs lay an egg in Chicken Run? And I'm not finding a definitive answer.
It's definitely one of those where
weirdly.
the sequel gap creates so many questions in my mind. You know, it's been a long time since the first Chicken Run film, right? That was like 20 years ago.
Mm.
Yeah, easily, right? We were
Yeah.
kids when that came out.
Surely,
It's
yeah.
like Space Jam. It did not need a sequel. Maybe the sequel's good.
I
No
just-
shade on Aardman. I wish them all the best, but
I'm going to be sitting there the entire time when I inevitably watch it thinking, like, could a chicken live 20 years, though? Like, is that this?
Oh, do you think it's like Twin Peaks when it's like it literally has been 25 years later?
Yes, I think it's exactly Twin Peaks The Return. Chicken Run.
Chicken Run: The Return.
Yes.
Okay, but that would be an epic crossover.
I mean, actually, that would make me a lot more interested in this sequel, to be honest.
Like instead of the Red Room, it's like the Red Hutch.
Oh,
And
yep,
like
okay,
that,
good.
that,
I
that,
that.
like the little rat in the suit is like dancing.
Oh my god, drop everything. We need to pitch this.
Yeah.
Who's
That'd be
the
great.
Laura Palmer of Chicken Run? Is it Babs? Is it?
I
Is it?
Oh,
think
it
it
could
might
be
be
Babs.
Babs.
Doesn't one of
Okay.
the chickens in Chicken Run like get murdered? Like that's how they find out what's going on, right?
It's been a
Oh, am I
long time since I
misremembering
saw
that?
it, but they should be like the spectre of death is ever present. That's sort of the motivator of the film.
Oh my god! I guess
Jesus
you're right.
Christ.
I guess the spectre of death is ever present in Aardman children's movie Chicken Run.
She doesn't want to be a pie. I think we all know what
She's
that
like
means.
gravy.
God, that is fucked up, that movie, actually.
You know, when we start these podcasts, I always have like a vague idea of where it might go, and it never ever
Right?
fucking goes where
Isn't
I think it is. What? The
Can't
spectre of
predict
death
us.
is ever present in Chicken Run. But I couldn't have in a million years have guessed that would have been said within the first 15 minutes of this podcast.
I didn't know it was going to happen until it just came out of my mouth, and I was like, okay.
Just really makes you think. We're asking the right questions
Yeah.
here.
We
What
are.
does
This
the-
is a
what-
challenging podcast.
What does the gravy represent in the pie of death? Chicken.
Capitalism.
Yes. All right.
Liquid life.
Problem solved. Indie games.
Hold on. What, liquid life? What do you mean?
Yeah, like life essence.
Yeah.
Wait, are they
Soul.
being... Okay, but like, okay, so they're being made into pies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do they make the gravy? Is the gravy already something that exists?
Oh,
I mean,
is
you
it
can have
chicken
chicken
gravy?
stock gravy, right? So, I mean, I don't eat meat, so
Okay, so maybe the gravy is because there's the machine, right? And obviously that's the capitalist machine, right? Humans get
course.
put
Okay.
in, living beings get put in, and a product comes out. So that's kind of straightforward, right?
yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah,
Yeah,
what
okay.
would the gravy be? Also, what's her name? Mrs. Tweedy?
Yeah.
Who's she? Oh, and isn't she married to someone? Who's he? And there's a dog. Who are they? The state.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and the dog is the the dog is the arm of force, like police force.
Oh,
and
Oh
he's
my
incompetent
God.
as well. Getting political here on Indieventure, right? Okay, I'm going to stop.
And
now.
Mr. Tweedy is like passive. He's like a passive man who
Weak.
benefits from system but
Cowardly.
doesn't stick up for the people who are being oppressed by it. Oh my
Also-
god, this
wow.
is like
Chicken Run. Maybe they did need a sequel. They didn't explore everything in the first film. They did like another hour
Yeah,
and 20
right.
minutes to explore.
wouldn't it be
I'm
amazing?
assuming it's
Good for
a
Aardman.
children's film length, right? They're not going to go for like a 3-hour
4 hours.
epic war epic.
it's the length of Flowers of the Killer Moon or whatever that Scorsese film is.
Oh yeah, they're going after Scorsese this season.
Good for
Definitely.
them. I mean, Netflix
Yeah.
have been looking for an Oscar winner, so I hope Chicken Run 2 is the.
Okay, but does Chicken
everything
Run
they've
2 have a
hoped for.
punny name? Did they give it a punny name? Sorry, last question. Like, you know, like how it's like Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel? Like, I'm thinking that
correct,
level
yeah.
of like punnage. Chicken Run 2. Oh, yeah. Dawn of the Nugget. Oh, I don't know
Oh
about
my
that.
god, no.
Oh, that's bad.
No, that's
bad.
dreadful.
That's awful.
The Squeakquel was great, though. The Squeakquel was like,
Yeah, Squeakquel
for
on
a
point.
time, I thought it was going to give Electric Boogaloo a run for its money as the default sequel name that we all say is a joke.
It's
kind
like
of
equal
dropped off
parts
again,
tacky and punny.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh,
It's
be like,
very, very
it's
good.
funny. Dawn of the Nugget is like, not it.
It's
It
just,
doesn't make any sense.
it's just horrifying. Whichever way you look
Yeah.
at it, it's just, I mean, maybe that's the point. Maybe it is going to be like an hour and a half of like nihilistic introspection about the horrors of the capitalist system. And if it is, you know what, I'd be impressed. Like, I probably wouldn't watch it because
We should watch this film, guys. we should watch this film.
watch this.
We've
and
convinced
analyse the
ourselves.
life out of it.
Should.
If you like the podcast, let us know. Contact at indieventurepodcast.co.uk. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Let's build up this base, and eventually, we'll do extra episodes where we analyze the shit out of Chicken Run 2.
I think there's a lot there to be
I'd be
said.
so up for that. Yes.
I think so. We are a serious podcast, aren't we? We're just asking questions, is what we're doing here at Indieventure.
Yeah. All good podcasts, you ask questions and you don't answer them, but you ask them in a way in which it's like, But is it?
You could not have set up a segue for section 1 better, Rachel, as we delve into asking a question and not really answering it.
Amazing.
Yes.
I've been thinking about what success even looks like in the run-up to this episode. We're talking about what we think success looks like in the indie space. As alluded to there, we're not going to answer this question. I think it's too broad.
Absolutely.
I am hoping we can reach some conclusions about the concept of success within this space. And in service of that goal, I've come up with 5 potential definitions for what I think success could mean within the indie space. So I thought we would go through my little definitions and have a little chat and try and work out which ones we think are correct and accurate and sort of what that means, and also maybe challenge our ideas of how success alters that perception of independent media. Does that sound
Absolutely.
good to you two?
Sounds good to me.
So, first definition, I think, is what I'm referring to as quote-unquote traditional success. And this is purely motivated by financials. These are games that sell millions of copies and make a lot of money. Now, do you know what, and I think you might be quite surprised by this, the best-selling indie games of all time are? Because I found a list of them, and bearing in mind that indie games aren't as often as well reported in terms of sales figures as AAA games. I mean, even AAA games, sometimes they just don't tell you how many copies they sell. But I'm going to read out the top 10 best-selling indie games.
Ooh.
And I think sometimes you'll be like, okay, that makes sense. And I think others, I was quite shocked. So, number 1, Minecraft. It's 60 million.
Wow.
Now, they stopped counting that when Mojang was published by Microsoft. It's now over 200 million, but it's still number 1 at 60 from when it was indie, which I think makes a lot of sense.
It does. Yep.
Number 2 is Terraria at 44.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3 is Human Fall Flat at 30
No
million
way.
sold.
I knew that was popular,
Yeah.
but
Number 4, we have Castle Crashers at 20 million, which makes sense. A very early indie game from 2008, and one I honestly don't think about much these days, but it makes sense why it was such a success. In number 5, we have Gary's Mod at 20 million. This is the Half-Life modding tool by Facepunch Studios, which I'm quite surprised by. 6, we have Stardew Valley, also at 20 million.
yeah, I thought Stardew would be up there somewhere.
Then there's a big drop-off with Fall Guys at 11 million. Again, they stopped counting at December 2020 when the company was picked up by Epic.
Damn.
Then we have Rocket League at 10.5 million, again, after they were picked up by Epic. And then we have Valheim with 10 million as well, which also makes sense.
Interesting.
I'm so glad that you read that particular article, because I must have read the same one a few weeks ago, because I actually looked this up for an article that I was writing back when Dredge sold its millionth copy. And I think there's a lot of interest to be got from the fact I don't think there's a single game on that list that is wholly single player, which I think makes sense, but also says a lot about, you know, the way that things sell in this industry, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's what's interesting about that list is like, it really does speak to the kinds of games that get quote unquote mainstream success. I am so shocked that Human Fall Flat is 3rd. Now, I like Human Fall Flat, but I never ever think of it as being the 3rd best-selling indie game of all time, only behind Minecraft and Terraria. Like,
that is wild.
I guess from that perspective, like, yeah, in terms of cold hard cash, and again, this isn't like an accurate list, I don't think. I do think that there's going to be other games out there that have probably sold more copies that just haven't been reported on. But like, yeah, multiplayer games that are given a lift by other services or by YouTubers or things like that, that's pretty successful, right? I think it's hard in a capitalist society not to look at those metrics and say, well, those games were successful.
Isn't the Humans Fall Flat devs, haven't they got another game coming out next year?
No
like,
Breaks Games.
Yeah, because they released that game, and then I don't know when that came out, years ago, right? And I think they're bringing out another one next year. It's like in a building site, so that is interesting as well. As in, like, they had such a successful game, and then obviously I guess they're releasing a sequel to that. Is that
Human
right?
Fall Flat 2. Yeah, Human Fall Flat 2 comes out next year.
Wow, they just literally said 2.
Yeah, I suppose another thing about like pretty much every game on that list is it has had or has quite a long life to it as well. I don't want to just straight up compare any of those games to kind of AAA live service games, because I think that without wishing to be too reductive about it, I think more care has gone into all of those games than your average live service AAA. Sorry, people who make them. I know that you must be passionate about your job too, and it sucks, but
I think there's a difference as well between a game that receives constant content updates to line the pockets of executives and a game that keeps getting worked on over the course of many years because the creator clearly enjoys it and sees
fair.
no end to their vision. Like Stardew Valley.
I was just thinking
like
Stardew Valley is like such a perfect example of this.
Because that still gets content updates all the time, even though developer Concerned Ape are working on Haunted Chocolatier. Is that their second game?
It looks so good.
It looks very, very good. So that, honestly, that's like the most boring, in my eyes anyway. It must be very lovely when you work that hard and get financially compensated to that degree. I think that is, in terms of success, very traditional, very accepted by society as this is what success looks like. And I think I'm maybe a little more interested in discussing these fringe cases and just trying to see how we feel about them. Second on my list, we have critical success. So these are games that are lauded by publications and fans, but might not see that positive reception replicated in terms of sales. So, I mean, there are so many indie games that are praised by outlets or receive overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam, games that we have shouted about on the podcast that we've done over the past year that might not have been as financially successful as maybe they should have been. I was thinking a bit about Season, A Letter to the Future, which came out earlier this year. I know, Rachel, you had a lot of good things to say about that game.
Yes.
And the developer sadly had to lay off half of its staff because it did not make as much money to, recuperate its costs. And it's sad because there's like a disconnect there between people really loved that game and unfortunately it didn't reach what we would come to describe as mainstream success.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like this idea that you can be like a critic's indie darling and still do terribly with sales. Like I spoke to for an article, the Case of the Golden Idol devs recently, Color Grey Games, and they said that even though all the accolades and stuff they were getting, all the awards from last year they were getting, in terms of like units being pushed, it was like a slow and steady. It wasn't like a boom, we've released the game, and now it's actually one of the things that they highlighted was they started to get traction when Lucas Pope shouted out their game, because who developed Return of the Obra Dinn, which is comparable to Case of Golden Idol. We've talked a bit about it before. But they were like, in terms of what got us on the map, critics and stuff, that was great, but people who follow players and who followed Lucas Pope, and Lucas Pope doesn't tweet a lot, when he promoted this indie game that no one had really heard of, this is still early in development, but it got them traction. And that was a big deal for them. And so, it got them wish lists on Steam. And we've talked about it as well, like the importance of wishlisting games and like developers really asking players to leave reviews on the Steam page, because that helps more with like pushing units. So I don't know. I feel like even though there's so much to say about like if reviews are even like a thing that should be done anymore, like what is their role in terms of the games industry? What role do they play? So it's interesting. I mean, we can be like, these are like the best. PC Gamer can be like, these are the best games that came out this year. But it's like, are you like, what is that doing? Who's that? Like, what's happening there? I think that's really interesting.
One thing I maybe wanted to touch upon with the first classification of traditional success stories, Minecraft, Stardew Valley, I think there is a huge degree of discoverability that goes into those projects that I think is becoming harder and harder as saturation grows, as it becomes easier to make games, which is incredible because it democratizes development. We get this situation where there are so many games released on Steam every single day. You can't just expect the cream to rise to the top. What if there's so much cream that you just don't have enough time to play all these things, right? Like, I would say the three of us consume more indie games than most people. Yeah. But I still always feel like I'm falling behind.
Oh, God, I'm massively behind at all times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's just, it is so much. And it all looks like it can just be amazing, right? There are, honestly, I've got a list on my computer because this is the way my brain works. I have to have lists in my eyeline at all times to know what I'm going to do next. And I have 25 indie games that were released this year that I've still not touched that I would really love to play because they look like really, the sort of stuff that I love. A lot of them are like, getting potential game of the year, like lauded. And I'm just like, realistically, I don't think I can pick up any more games between now and the end of the year and finish anything that I'm currently playing. And it's
that's
like,
a really interesting point as
it's
well.
It's a great problem to have, but you do feel bad for those devs, right? Because, everyone's in that boat.
But also, critics miss big games. Like, there are so many games, like for me, Omori, that released, like, was it 2021, 2022? Massive fan base, massive. And no one reviewed it. No one chatted about it. This year, like, arguably indie or not, whatever, Dave the Diver has gone massively under people's radars, except for fans who are literally just like, this game is one of the best of the year. Then critics started picking it up. And I think that is a really good point, Rebecca. Like, there's so many games that, like, critics have to pay attention to. And it's like, when you have a group of fans who are actually going to buy the game over critics who are just going to write a couple of articles, get some SEO, get some clicks, and disappear into the ether, like, who's more important?
Well, exactly.
It's probably the fans.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, not to make it, too much about our, the way our jobs work or have worked in the past, but like the way that
not me just shitting on our jobs. Critics don't need them.
I was going to be more neutral about it. I was going to say, as a professional in games journalism, all of that looking at indie games, and I think like the three of us would happily focus on indie games like as much as we can professionally, but certainly, like where I still work and where we've all worked at times, you have to work all this around. You've got to hit Baldur's Gate 3, you've got to hit Starfield, Spider-Man 2, all of the big, all the big AAAs coming out. You've still got to make sure that you've got a working knowledge of those as well. And so it's just like, frankly, between you and me, I'd happily give a few of those the boot. Not all of them. I do, I have enjoyed a couple of big AAAs this year, but I would have liked to have seen my professional life this year more geared towards indies with the occasional AAA, but the way that SEO works and the way that the market works for our jobs does mean that indie has to be something that you fund through AAA, not the other way around, sadly. But yeah, it's very, very true.
That raises this small issue really with, is it an issue? I think what you find is that every year critics will gravitate towards one or two indies, and those indies will become the critical choice of the year. Like, I love Dredge. Yes. I don't want what I'm about to say to be any shade on Dredge, but I think Dredge got a bit of a groundswell by a couple of critics, and then everyone else sort of saw it as like, okay, well, I'm going to try that out because everyone else is playing it, and you have such limited free time and such limited brain space for indies when you're working in games full time, that I think sometimes critics, they do have to pick and choose. Maybe they go for quote unquote safer bets. It's, I know that when I was at RPS, just speaking for myself here, I didn't have time, and as much as I'd love to have just played as much as I could just to see what was out there, to find those tiny little games that you can then shout about and say, look, no one's playing this, and people should. And I think the idea of critical success, I guess this classification does have two parts, right? It has, what are the critics saying about it? Acting as curators for the industry, which I do think a lot of critics are. And then you have, well, what are the fans saying? Does it have overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam? What are people saying about it? And yeah, I do wonder how that must be for developers. If their game gets a 10 in Edge, but then doesn't translate to sales.
Probably frustrating. Probably incredibly frustrating. I think this other thing as well is like marketability as well, because like with Dredge, it's like a horror fishing game. Horror fishing. 3 words.
Like fishing games are so in at the moment as well, which has got to be a huge factor in. I feel like Dredge has both fed off of and fed into the fact that fishing games are big on the indie scene right now.
So that's like 3 words. Case of the Golden Idol devs, again, they were like, well, part of our problem was we couldn't describe the fucking game in like 20 words or less. It's a fill in the blank mystery point and click that takes place over like 50 years in the 18th century. Like, just describing their game was like if your game can be summed up in a couple of words. And unfortunately, again, critics, news, SEO, Google, and all that. The reason sometimes why you won't see an indie game in the headline, an indie game name in the headline of like an indie game article, is because it won't tract unless your game is a hook, pun intended for Dredge.
That's a good one.
So I think with like, it's interesting how we all have like quite an in-depth experience of like this aspect of the industry, like this, like critics as well is like it's such a almost like a dice roll. Like you could like play a game and it might not click with you. For me, it was Paradise Killer. Played the game a year before, was like, nah, I'm not into the demo at all. Then the game came out, people started chatting about it, and I was like, oh right, I gotta play it, and it was the best thing ever. So like I wouldn't have played that game again unless it was for chat, or it had won awards, or it had like garnered interest.
Your time to make a decision is so limited. It's like oh, I don't know if I should name the game. It seems mean-spirited to name the game that I just had to bounce off of after an hour. And
should we bleep it out?
I can bleep it out.
Okay, I'll say it because it's is one that Rachel got me a code for, and I was really excited to try it. And an hour in, I was like, it's just not clicked, and I don't have the time to wait to get invested, which is a real shame. But it's that exact feeling. It's like if been there. It's if you don't feel hooked, oh my god, I'm just gonna keep thinking about the hooked metaphor now. Like with Dredge, an hour in, I was invested, and with please bleep that. It was fine. It was good. Even I just couldn't find a reason to keep playing it instead of one of the dozens of other games that I was trying to consider at the same time in the same categories. Another thing about different ways that critics and audiences interact with games. I have a little bit of inside baseball on this. I don't want to keep talking about day jobs too much, but I find this one really interesting.
No, go on.
Ooh.
Is that a couple of years ago, I was asked by my once and future editor, James, at VG247, where I do guides. I was asked, hey, there's this game trending. I think I've heard you talk about it. Can you see if there are any guides in it? And it was Monster Prom, which, as you may know, is one of my favorite games of all time. Quite possibly my favorite indie.
What is that game?
It is Monster Prom. We're all going to find prom dates. Genuinely, almost certainly my favorite indie game that I've ever played. And I was like so thrilled that it was trending. And I was like, I'm going to get to do some guides on my favorite indie game. This is amazing. And when I looked into the terms that were trending with it, it was a lot of things like headcanons and fan art and fan fiction and stuff that just there is no remit in what we do really to cover that as well. Yeah. So it's just a case of a game that is really well designed to get its audience and its fans, and that fan base is passionate enough that they were showing up in Google Trends after a certain update dropped or whatever. But there is kind of no established way for traditional games media or critics to engage with it in that way. And obviously there was me engaging with it on a fanish level at the same time out of work, but unable to kind of bring that into the workspace and kind of, marry that fanish interest to the professional interest, even though on paper it should have been possible. You see what I'm saying? That
is a fascinating measure of success that I hadn't actually considered. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because you reminded me of, was it a Flash game, a Friday Night Funkin' that became huge 2 years ago? And I don't know a huge amount about the game, but I know that it got an incredible modding and fan art, and just the scene around it was enormous. Yeah. And I don't think I saw a single person in our industry talking about it. But
I did.
Oh, did you? Oh, yeah. Of course. Well, I mean, sorry, no one in the industry other than literally someone who could not have their finger harder on the pulse. Rachel Watts, everybody. If you think about a game and she'll DM you saying, I'm playing it right now. You're like, oh, okay, I didn't even message you, Rachel.
It happened to me this week.
Yeah, happened to me as well. But yeah, that's a really interesting measure of success that I did not think about. A game that captures the imagination of an audience and gets success almost through people's relationship with it, not just the actual game itself.
Just writing good characters can carry you a really long way, and it almost can't make a dent in the way that critics can engage with a game that,
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
It is really, really interesting as an idea.
About the guide stuff.
Yeah, there's nothing I can do. I mean, if you have something like for example, at the moment, it's on my mind a lot, Baldur's Gate 3, the romanceable companions are also buildable characters. I can do a lot of stuff with Astarion or Karlach as search terms because of that. But, the equivalent in Monster Prom is it's literally like how to romance every character, and that is the entire game, and that is not what people are searching for, so there's just no way in from a like SEO perspective, which I hate how much I said SEO on this podcast today, but it is actually how we run things in the back end. So
when I said it, I was like, oh.
Yeah, I know. I feel a bit gross.
It goes to show about how hard it is. It's a losing game for everyone involved. Like, there's not a single person who writes about video games who doesn't want to break the story of this incredible game that no one's playing.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's probably why most of us get into the industry, is we want to be the champions of games that deserve to be played and loved. And unfortunately, the system doesn't always accommodate that.
Dude,
but I mean, you're here listening to this, so clearly you're looking for that, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me hyperfixate on fictional characters in a way that I thought I might be able to do in my day job more than I now realise I am allowed to do.
Love that. Oh my god.
It's so true.
Oh, that's funny.
So all right, I've got so much mileage to get out of this Astarion build. It's gonna be like 8 paragraphs of adoring like commentary, and also he can only really wear light armor, so deal with that, I guess.
Didn't wear anything in my playthrough. Moving on, I think the next classification is personal success. So this is literally just recouping enough money to make up what you spent and fund your next thing. And I think there's a lot of developers that survive this way. They literally just make enough success that they can keep working on the next thing. I was thinking of things like maybe like Rusty Lake that we've spoken about a little bit over the last few weeks.
Rusty Lake is probably a good example of that. I don't know how they work internally, but
yeah, the Off-Peak City games by Cosmo D, like these sort of like very fringe projects that keep getting made, and you can only assume that they've found enough success that they're able to continue creating. I feel like that's definitely a measure.
I think that's very true. I would also, I mean, it's sort of name an indie dev who manages to consistently put out a game every year or so, and you're probably looking at someone who works on that model, right? Especially when you're looking at like 1 or 2 person teams. The other example other than Rusty Lake that sprung to mind just then was NPCKC, who made A Year of Springs, another of my favorite indie games. I recently went back to their storefront on Steam and realized that they've brought out like 3 more games since I like sort of last had a look at what they're doing. And awesome. They are solo dev, so I'm thinking like that again must be and their games aren't expensive, but it's got that kind of like, word of mouth kind of filling a niche in terms of like what certain players want to see. And it's like, it's that sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say hand to mouth. That's the wrong way to put it, but it is like that sort of like just not worrying too much about exponential growth and just like maintaining and making art. I feel like that's kind of the dream, I think, for a lot of indie creators, would be just to be able to sustain the work that you're doing and keep making like art under your own terms entirely.
Right, it's the goal for everyone.
Yeah,
to make art to sustain your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's interesting because the developers that I think when I see that is Sock Pop, who have the Patreon format.
That's a good point. I didn't even consider Patreon.
Right? So like they have just cut out this whole marketing business like idea. They just cut that out, and now through their Patreon release, I used to be Patreon maybe a year or 2 ago. I don't know how I do it now, but it was the case that there's like 3 of them, and one of them would bring out a game every month. And the idea was that the Patreon would be going towards the bigger games they are working on. They would make little games, but then the money you would give them, you'd get the little games, but then it'd be going towards these bigger projects they'd be working on. I don't know, like Burner Bad. I've not heard about what's the situation with that game for many years now. But that was like their setup. I'm not sure if it's the same right now. I think they still are doing the Patreon thing, but maybe it's like, it's like not one a month, or was it one every 2 weeks? It was something wild. It was something honestly wild. I know they're still making games because I see them around, but that kind of setup is is interesting as well. Like they are self-funding through crowdfunding. So that is interesting. I've always really I've been surprised that no one else has done that before, like the same thing. But at the same time, the churn of games that they've put out is intense. Like making like there's three of them, but making like a game every couple of weeks is like, and I think for them it was like they wanted to explore creative ideas and kind of pursue projects which is like the dream, right? They could like dip into genres that they make little games and see what people's reactions were. And I think that was interesting. I'm honestly not sure about the bigger projects though, because if you're making your little games, you don't have time to work on the big game, which you're making money for. So, but yeah, that came to mind when I was looking at that point, because that's cool as fuck.
That Sock Pop could not be a better example for that. I completely agree. Yeah.
What are they? They're still definitely going, right? Sock.
I was just looking. Yeah, you can still subscribe to the Patreon. They released a game this month, I think I just saw.
We're making 100 games. Oh
another developer doing that, Chiller's Art, as well as one that comes to mind when I think of Patreon supporters. And they just brought out another one. Like Parasocial only came out a couple of months ago, and they just brought out another new one, which is just so impressive. I mean, like I think they've got a really nice rhythm going of like regular new games, but nothing too sort of. I'm not too worried about the state of the developers at Chiller's Art. You know, I think they've got a nice rhythm going without.
Yeah, they just like release a game whenever. Like it's like, oh, new Chiller's Art game, that's cute. Instead of it being like, God, we're on a schedule and people will not be happy. Well, I don't think that, but like they need to like release because people are paying like monthly towards it. Chiller's Art is also a really good one.
I think for me personally, this is the one that feels like the success that I would be most happy with, is just being able to sort of maybe not worry-free create what I want to create for the rest of, or for as long as I can, but to be sustainable enough that there's food on the table, the mortgage is paid, and I get to do something creative. I feel like it's probably not that romantic in reality, but I think it's nice that there are ways that this can be sustainable for people who want to try it.
I'd love to bring up a quick like counterpoint on this, not as an argument against, but just as another way of looking at this kind of way of measuring success, which is I've been thinking a lot recently when we started talking about doing this episode about indie studios who partner with AAA publishers, because just not long ago, Little Goody Two Shoes released, which is a very indie game that's been published by Square Enix. And obviously that's
mad.
Right, it's just
wild.
And
it's so left field.
It must be working for everybody, right? Because, you know, you've got all the big publishers seem to want to have like a few indie studios they're partnered with to be bringing out these indie games. You know, we talked about Power Wash Simulator is another one. You've got the EA Originals program. We've talked about this before, so I don't want to go into it in too much detail, but I just think it's like, obviously there must be a certain, if not giving up of creative control, then at least a rigorous sort of acceptance process to be published by someone that huge. But I basically, I just really want to read you this thing in my notes that I've written because I like it, where it says, I think Joseph Fares might fuck you up if you suggest he's not an indie dev just because EA publishes games. So.
Oh, absolutely. He would stab you.
Yeah.
But
he's unhinged.
He is unhinged. I would argue he's not an indie.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I mean, you can
sauce babe.
You can go and take that to Joseph Fares. I just really like that.
I would. Are you kidding me? Notes. I hope he never hears this. I'm terrified of that guy.
He would he wouldn't even subtweet. He'd full on tag us all.
He'd come to my house.
Yeah, he would come to. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I would reassess because I haven't had a look at what he's doing in a couple of years. But I would argue certainly that he exists on the indie continuum, or has done at points in his career. And
Brothers was an indie game.
A Way Out, I think, is also can be argued as having existed in the industry. It's difficult.
It's
right?
like every game is inching.
Exactly.
It's like indie mentality, right? We've spoken about this idea of indie mentality when approaching things. This could be an entire other topic.
This could be. Sorry,
I think
I really really just wanted to read the line in my notes. I didn't want to derail it entirely. But
well, because it brings us, in this case, I'm going to jump to my last classification and then loop back to another one. It's this idea of broad success. It's where indie games become so big, they start to lose their independent classification, or like, I don't know how you describe it. They start to not feel like indie games anymore. So
yes, it's got to be a feeling, right?
Yeah. Like, I was in Copenhagen over the weekend and there was posters everywhere for Five Nights at Freddy's. There is a movie of an indie game. Like,
there are spin-offs, rip-offs of that, like, of the movie.
Yeah.
Of games. Yes. Yeah. It's really...
Yeah. Like,
it's big.
Five Nights has become this thing, and it is still... we don't have to talk about Scott Cawthon and his incredibly questionable politics, as that's all I'll say about that. But that is still very much owned by him. Like, he's not sold those rights. It has not done a Minecraft. It has not done a Fall Guys. Like, that is a movie that is technically still based on an independently owned video game.
Wild.
But
yeah,
do we still consider that to be indie? Like, and this is a question that we've had a few times before, but, you know, we look at Minecraft. Minecraft now, not an indie game. At one point, it very much was. Fall Guys was an indie success story purchased by Epic, and then the way that Epic treated the people at Mediatonic, absolutely horrific. Like, to all those who lost their jobs recently, like, I can't apologize enough, and I hope you're all doing as best you can. You did amazing work there. But that was an indie. Is that even an indie success story at that point? Like,
yeah,
it was to an extent, but then look how it was treated by the Fortnite people. Like, it's gross. But yeah, you sort of like look at these things can get so successful that they lose all of their like original independent origins, and that's great. And that is success in almost its most capitalistic form, right? Of where it gets to such a degree that it sort of becomes fuzzy and sort of like sad in some ways.
This is kind of my favorite aspect of this topic, because I have so many like left field examples of this happening, and hopefully I can bring you some that are happier than the Fall Guys story. So this was like because I think it was me who sort of suggested this episode topic in the first place. I just forget we all share the same brain, and so sometimes I forget
the
who
one
said
same
what.
brain cell.
But I think this was me. Because I was really interested. I was thinking about things like the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, but also I got to thinking about Detention, which is a indie horror game that I really love, which got a Netflix adaptation fairly recently. Rachel, I know you've watched it. I haven't yet. I really mean to watch it, but just the fact that you've got this. I know you didn't like it. I still want to watch it.
Just whispers. I didn't like it.
But regardless, almost, I don't want to say regardless of the quality of the adaptation, but the fact that it's still an entirely indie game. I mean, Red Candle games are like super indie, right? They, for various unfortunate reasons, can't even get published on Steam anymore. So they are really self-owned, self-published, even in the truest sense of like not really being tied to a platform anymore. And yet they, Netflix have bought the rights to produce a adaptation of one of their works, which is pretty special, I think, is something that's still very definitely in the indie space. But other things I was thinking about as well were things like Dead by Daylight, which was, again, started as indie. Still arguably, no one else really owns it, as far as I'm aware, but they've got the licenses for everything. Another couple of examples that I really liked, Tigan Games, who make the Simulacra series of found phone horror games that I really like. On the basis of that, we're commissioned to make a Doctor Who tie-in game on the same formula, but using Doctor Who characters.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And of course, you've got the recent example of the Chinese room making Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, which I find to be an interesting, like... So it's just... You have got these cases of, like, obviously bigger concerns are coming in and there must be an influence there. But again, it's another version of success that I can imagine being quite satisfied with. Basically, like, if I was making Dead by Daylight and they were like, okay, write up a treatment for your favorite horror franchise to be included in Dead by Daylight, and we'll see if we can, that's got the kind of like dream scenario written all over it as well, isn't it? Like a nerd getting to make a Doctor Who game because of the strength of their original games, that sort of thing. I don't want to say that, these are glowing examples of things being fine forever, because I think that that's unfortunately not where this industry is. But it kind of does go to show as well, just that the sort of the whole continuum, which I don't even think is a continuum, it's more like a Venn diagram at this point of AAA, AA, and indie. There's a lot of movement around it, and you see a lot of companies now taking more of a punt on an indie studio to produce something of high quality, especially if it's something that they have a lot of provenance of doing a particular genre well.
Well, you've just reminded me, maybe the most, in my mind, like bonkers example of this is the Crypt of the Necrodancer developers making a Zelda game.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Nintendo gave them the Zelda license to make like a little oddball indie rhythm game. Like, yeah, there are definitely good examples of this, and I think it just becomes a bit messy at this level, but you're right, it must be incredible. Like, if Nintendo come knocking on your door and say, do you want to make a Zelda game? Like, and you've done that on your own back with your own IP, with your own mechanics.
It's
like,
incredible. Yeah.
It must be absolutely bonkers.
And now they're making another Crypt of the Necrodancer, right? So
yep,
that's great. So they didn't even have to like do anything with their own IP. They asked to do something else, and now they can just go back to their personal pet project. Yeah. And it's going to be great because we played the demo and it was fucking amazing.
Oh, we did, didn't we?
Was it a Rift of the Necrodancer?
Rift of the Necrodancer. Oh, I can't wait for that. It's so good. Final classification, a very quick one. These are long-term projects that find success after an extended period of time. I'm thinking of things like Among Us and Project Zomboid, these games that have been in development for such a long time. Among Us is one of the wildest
oh my goodness.
success stories. Like, the fact they were trying to sunset the game when it took off, is just incredible.
See, that's a success story.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like very cut and clean.
Yeah. Like the idea of like anything that you walk into a toy shop and you see plushies on the shelves of the characters in the game, which is certainly my experience of Among Us.
I would actually go one step further. I would say that true bonkers wild success is when you see knockoff merch for the indie game.
Poppy Playtime stuff that you see everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Poppy Playtime, Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, Among Us is the biggest one. We were in Spain early this year, and the amount of like people on the streets who were selling Among Us t-shirts was wild.
Incredible.
This is in 2023. This is arguably 3 years after the height of that game's popularity. Like, the kids love those space beans. What can I say?
They are very good space bean. With a single bone.
Didn't they like release something about like what is actually inside the suits?
That was Fall Guys, wasn't it?
That was Fall Guys.
Was that Fall Guys?
Like, Fall Guys, they were like, with a skeleton of a Fall Guy, and it was just
absolutely
horrific. Oh my goodness.
And they're like canonically 7.5 feet tall.
Oh my god. Nah.
Makes you feel weird, doesn't it?
Speak for yourself.
Among Us is such a good example because that's just like circumstance of world events.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So like you can't even control. Like they had no control over that. That just happened for them out of nowhere. It wasn't like, oh yeah, that like we did this directly because this would happen. It was like, oh no, this happened directly to us.
Yes.
And the game itself was great. This is the thing we're talking about discoverability. Among Us was sat there for years, as good as it was when people discovered it at the point where people needed it. But if we didn't have a global pandemic, would Among Us have ever took off in the way that it did?
Right.
That's a really hard question to answer, I think.
Indeed.
It's like Fear and Hunger, the recent like wave of Fear and Hunger, like people playing that game, which is like, have you guys heard of that?
I haven't even heard it. I don't
This
know what
is
you're talking about.
wild.
I haven't.
So like I feel like a couple of YouTubers found it and made video essays about it. And now I see it on YouTube all the time. People analysing it, the lore behind it.
What?
It's just completely and utterly popped off a couple of years after this single dev released it. I think they were actually working on like the follow-up as well when like everyone started popping off about this game. Like I've never played it, but I know a lot about it just from the amount of YouTubers talking about this game and how brutal it is. And I think that was appeal as well. Like people could play it on YouTube and stream it and be like have their ass kicked by this fucking game. So yeah, that's another one that like for years, and then YouTubers like a community of essayists and YouTube like Let's Players found the game and just absolutely rocketed into like the stratosphere with how its popularity and now everyone's fucking playing it. But that's the
Wow.
thing. If you don't know of it or are not in these spaces, you would have no clue that this was even a
absolutely.
game and that it had a follow-up which was just successful. Like, it popped off at just the right time for this dev because they released the follow-up and then everyone went bonkers for that as well. Like, mad. Absolutely crazy.
I haven't even heard of that. And that's
Yeah.
the worrying thing, right? Like, how many incredible games are out there that
Like
we've
stories.
just never heard of?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many people release a great game and it never has an Among Us moment. Like,
Oh, God.
you know, it's just wild, isn't it? It's absolutely wild. So one last question then. How do we think success impacts our perception of what an indie game is? Which was kind of the original question that formed the backbone of this episode, right? Like, success is such a nebulous thing, and I've played a lot of games that aren't traditionally successful but are so important to me, and it's games I would never have heard of if they hadn't achieved mainstream success. What does that mean?
I think it's interesting because, like, success and ambition are two different things. Like, you can be ambitious and reach your goals but not deem, quote unquote, like, be a successful indie game or indie dev. And I think maybe this idea of success we've been talking about in like traditional, critical, personal like ways is like, however whatever that dev's ambitions are, if it's like just to have enough money to like sustain, or if they do get like a Netflix deal, wild, like,
right.
take anything that comes your way as well. Like, this idea about like selling out as well is wild to me. Like, I just don't understand that mindset, especially like if you're someone who hasn't been creating things as part of their like living. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think there's different ways about going about it. Like, the whole like epic exclusivity as well with Ooblets, like that game is the game it is today is because they took that deal and everyone was like, you selling out. What was it people kept calling the games that were going epic exclusive something really mean? I can't remember it. But
that whole thing was so pathetic.
it was
Oh,
wild.
God.
It was like, oh my God, these are two people who got an offer, and of course you would take it because it's a
of course
fucking
you take it.
dancing creature, wholesome farming sim. Like, of course you would. It's not going to reach everyone.
If the creator of the biggest game in the world turns up at your door with a dump truck full of money and
You're going to be like,
says,
yes, please.
you can pay your
Right?
mortgage for the next 2 years and not have to worry and work on your dream project. Like, and then they were getting shit. And Ooblets, how could you ever look at Ooblets and be like, oh, I think I'm going to commit a crime on the internet over this? Like,
Right.
what the hell? Like, don't do that. Like, think about it, people. These are human beings and they're just trying to make nice things. Like,
I am trying my hardest at the moment to cover Ooblets stories at work so that whole business is not the only thing that comes up when you search Ooblets on major gaming sites.
I fucking love Ooblets.
Yeah, it's a great game. It is a lovely game. God, we didn't even go into it. Maybe it's probably the best that we didn't even go into things like Epic Game Store exclusivity because we were looking at it all night. But yeah, no, I'm fully on team dump truck full of money to do what you love. Like, everyone's compromised by capitalism, so you know.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunately probably the bottom line of this conversation, right? Is
indeed.
Yeah, to do what we would like to do worry free is true success. But you know, if you make a bit of money doing it, it's also not a problem. You're not going to turn your nose about it.
Really good summary, I think.
I'd like to end this sort of like loose conversation. I've enjoyed this. Thank you both. Some very insightful points as always from the two of you. I'd like to just put out a little call to action for any indie developers who are listening. If you'd like to get in touch, if you'd like to let us know your experience, if you'd like to just offer any insights into this, please do get in touch. Contact at indieventurepodcast.co.uk. We read all our emails. Yeah, get in touch. And just send an email and be like, no, it's not like that.
I would love that.
Just the way
I would love that too. Yeah,
definitely. We only have the perspective of it from within the industry, but from, you know, a non-dev perspective. So obviously, our understanding is limited by what we're able to see from the vantage point of critics. And yeah, it'd be fantastic to get some dev voices into the conversation on this.
But also, if we're wrong, I'm very sensitive. Please don't send mean emails or tweets. Thank you. I'm a very fragile human being.
You've said that so often. I mean, I am too, but
never spoken to an indie dev who was not a lovely person, and I'm not just saying that because we've just shared an email address that I have to respond to on the podcast. I really mean it.
I'll say this: if anyone wants to be mean to me, listen, I'll do the TikTok Freddy Fazbear meme. Horror, 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 horror. See, how can you be mean to me? You look like you've never. Why do you look so
Rachel's
horrified?
horrified face.
You must know that meme on TikTok.
No, the FNAF meme I know is the one where they do the robot moves in time with the.
Have you not seen the Freddy Fazbear meme?
No, babes.
Oh,
and I'm on
right,
TikTok
okay,
24/7, so it's just you. You've just
Cut
seen
that
it.
bit out.
You're fueling the meme
Me, sleep deprived in
watch
the
it.
corner.
20 times a day, 50 times a day, watching that FNAF meme, Freddy Fazbear meme.
Should we move on to section 2?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
They're really cool the way they do it though. They dance like
incredible,
their automatic. What are they called? Automatons? No. What are they called? Like Chuck E.
Animatronics.
Cheese.
Animatronics.
Yeah. This is why you're here. This is why you're here.
At least there's some reason for being here. It doesn't feel like I
This
should
is-
be here today.
This is why you're here. When I forget a word,
Finally found a use for you, Liam. Let's do it.
Aw.
stop that. Stop that right now.
Never. Cut out me doing the Freddy Fazbear. I feel like I had a disassociative episode at the end there.
See, I would have joined in, but I didn't know what you were talking about. I would have been on the Freddy Fazbear bandwagon. I'm going on TikTok right now.
This is what I was referring to. It's not
Oh,
even
thank
funny.
Christ. Okay, no, I want to see it. Down with the kids. Down with the sickness.
It's more of a sickness than down with the kids, I think.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
It's not even funny. It's just, it comes up on my FYP all the time.
I want to see.
Rebecca's face.
I think I kind of get it.
Oh. Right.
Or.
So I would have joined in, soz babes.
Sorry, don't worry about it. Hi, listener. I'm going to cut into section 2 here because you know how earlier I said that sometimes Rachel will just mention a game that looks incredible and you've never even heard of it? She just did it there based on an art print that I showed for a second. It's called Flock by Hollow Ponds and Richard Hogg.
Yeah.
It's coming soon. How did I miss this? A multiplayer co-op game about the joy of flight?
Do you know why? Because it was in one of the events and it was just a trailer in like a long line of like 2-hour event. That's why.
Oh, right, okay.
That's what we're talking about. There's so many
yeah.
games and like you come out of an event and you're like, oh, I only remember Alan Wake 2 and you're like, oh, there was like 5 other things that you missed. This is one of them. But I wrote up a news story about this, so which is why I remember it. I was like, I have the news story for this one. And also I really liked I Am Dead. That's the one where the guys, I like that game. Morris
is that the
Lupton.
same developer?
Yes, that is. I love Morris. He was on an indie character pub crawl.
Yeah, you said that you would share a delicious pint of ale with him, I think.
Oh, bless him. And his dog Sparky as well. Hollow Ponds. It was them.
So this section, we're going to quickly run through some indie games that we've been playing that we think you should play. I mean, obviously we have to start with you, Rachel. The font of indie knowledge at the moment. You've been playing so much.
Oh,
What have you been playing? Please tell us about it.
I have been playing Saltsea Chronicles. I finished it a couple of days ago. It's by Die Gute Fabrik, who did Mutazione, which I played. I thought it was really good. But I quite like games that have weird communities, or you're going around with a weird group of people exploring different communities, like Kentucky Route Zero or a bunch of other games. But yeah, Saltsea Chronicles is very much in that vein. You play as a group of characters on a sailboat who leave their home island and are traveling to different islands in this archipelago. It's kind of post-apocalyptic in that it's kind of like I'm not sure how long it is after like current day, but like they refer to like our time, like as in like a while ago. So I'm guessing it's like 100 years. It's kind of post-capitalist, post-individualistic society where there's no money, so you trade instead, and all these different communities work and in different ways, and you visit these different islands looking for your lost captain who mysteriously disappeared. And yeah, it's very much a visual novel. There's lots of reading. It's kind of choose your own adventure in terms of like what island you go to will like decide which other island you go to, and like a string of different events. It's just really great. It has a great cast of characters. The communities themselves are so interesting as well. That there's like this one island that's just run by cats. Like there's just like a bunch of cats on the island.
Yes.
And the whole like the amount of detail that's gone into like thinking of these, how this community would run, and like what is it about the island that like kind of spurred on this specific like activity and attitude. And so the one with this cat island is just someone just really liked cats, and there's like now just a bunch of cats that are just bred and now on this island. And there's a woman who on your boat is like part, like that's her home island, and even the language she uses, you know where she's from. So she'll call people like pet names like kitten, and she'll like say like, oh, that's like a she describes the situation as like a ball of yarn. You're like, it's like all this cat knowledge, cat puns going on. Honestly, that character, she's like an old lady who loves scuba diving, and she's amazing. Yeah, if you're into nautical stories, hello, Rebecca.
Hello.
I'm
already listening. Don't worry.
You will definitely love this as well. There's also quite a spiritual side to it in terms of like it's like 100 years. So there's this ability that people can do called dream sailing, where it's kind of part meditation, part kind of I don't like transcendentalism, where you sit down with yourself, you go into a state, and then you can see visions, and you can see maybe parts of the future, and your interpretation of it is like down to you as an individual, and how you take meaning from stuff. But also, this game has some very melancholy moments. There's an island, society completely dedicated to people who have lost people in their lives. And you come to the island, and you can stay there as long as you want. And the idea is that you just get through this process of losing someone very close to you.
Oh my God.
These islanders are called guides, and they essentially like help you through that trauma process. And it's just really interesting. You learn with how the archipelago deals with murderers. You know how this archipelago deals with like other interesting corners of societies. Like, okay, but if you like, how do artists work? Like, is there a future in which like artists, like we talk about, where they can like make a living, and who buys art in this post-apocalyptic world? There's this island that's like a huge ferry cruise ship turned upside down, and you explore all the different like aspects of this like upside down cruise ship and the people who live on there now, and like what their deal is. It's great. It's both parts joyful and melancholy. It's got a great art style. The character designs are interesting. It's very diverse. Lots of queer characters. Lots of just like, yeah, it's really great. I think it's probably going to be in my top 10, maybe not top 5, we'll see, but top 10 games of the year. Okay. It's just so my shit. It's unbelievable. So that's Saltsea Chronicles. It's great. I love it. I was really surprised by it. I thought it wouldn't be much. I don't know why. There's a lot of good indies this year, so maybe I thought that, I don't know. But actually, it was really great. It's very good.
Well, Steam has logged me out, but as soon as I get logged back in, that's going on my wish list.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
Guess what I did during that conversation? I mean, that felt a bit emotional. You're talking about that island of loss and people guiding.
Yeah. It's such a
It's
meaningful concept.
Yeah, there are a lot of like, I was surprised at how like there are like sad moments in it, and I was surprised given the art style is very like colourful, the characters are very cartoonish, lots of block colours. So yeah, when those moments came up, I was like, okay, we're doing this. Fine, we're doing this. Like, I'm in my feels now. Yeah, and there's such amazing details as well of like each of these communities and how they. I think there's like 12 overall, and just the thinking and planning behind each one is like, God, I would live in any of these places, in any of in this in the future. I would be happy living anywhere. For sure. So yeah.
Oh wow.
Incredible recommendation. I genuinely can't wait to play that.
I think, know, right?
So, you know what? I listened back to an old episode where you were describing Obra Dinn, like in hindsight after playing it.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, she's good at getting to the bottom of why games are special. She should write for a living, I think.
But you know what? This podcast, the format of the podcast, it makes you have to talk about a game quickly in a short amount of time, but in a way that you're like, I'm like selling you the game. Like, I want you to play it, and I want listeners to play it. So it's kind of like a learned skill that I think all of us share from starting the podcast. Was like, okay, we need to get through why this game is good in a very short amount of time.
Otherwise, very easily,
Sometimes.
this podcast would be 6 hours long every
so
fortnight.
Easily. Oh.
Some of you sickles would love that, wouldn't you? Rebecca, I think I know what you're going to talk about, and I'm really excited. So what have you been playing?
I think you probably do know. So I was saying earlier that I've got so many games on the go that realistically I need to not start anymore if I want to finish any of them by the end of the year. So I started playing Slay the Princess, because that's what I do, is I do things that are bad for me because of like an impulsive desire to do something that looks just too good to miss. So yeah, I started playing Slay the Princess a few days ago. I've only managed to get sort of one sitting with it at the moment just because of life stuff, but I am really poised to get back into it. So the sort of high concept for it that I've written down, and I always do these high concepts and then I get really annoyed because I'm like, you should be able to describe a game on its own merits and not lean on comparisons with other things. But also I do find high concepts quite helpful, especially because I was surprised by how much this game kind of reminds me of the Stanley Parable.
I see that. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
It's got like Stanley Parable and quite a bit of Hellblade in there as well as the more obvious comparisons like Doki Doki Literature Club, and also I think it's got kind of the Monster Prom thing going on. Obviously, it does. Yes. There's an evil princess you're romancing. That's my girl Miri from Monster Prom, and that's the princess of Slay the Princess. So yeah, the Slay the Princess is a visual novel / dating sim. Kinda, I'd argue about the dating sim classification because there's only one romanceable character, but it's like the art style is this sort of gorgeous black and white, like pen and ink, almost Edward Gorey-esque like art style. And yeah, the concept is you are a knight, maybe. Initially, you kind of have no memories at the start. You're going to this cabin where a princess is being held prisoner, and you're being told there's a voice in your head. There's the voice of the narrator saying you have to slay this princess to save the world, and she is going to lie to you and manipulate you. She'll say anything to avoid that her fate is to be slain by you to save the world. And it is such a, I mean, that already sounds quite weird, right? But it's got this kind of like, you look at that and you think, oh, it's going to be like a kind of quirky, weird, like, but no, within a few minutes, you'll get a sense of just how weird it is. It is about time loops, and it is about repeating the same section of the game over and over and over again and noticing very subtle differences that then snowball into massive differences. And you learn, oddly, so far in my playthrough, I think I'm a couple of hours in, I feel like I've learned more about myself and the sort of
Ooh.
overarching world more than the princess of the title, who is still quite mysterious to me. I'm not sure who she is yet and what her deal is, but I'm starting to suspect some things about my character, who doesn't seem to know who he is. It is odd, and it is, I'll be honest, I came into this game knowing a little bit about it. It is one that I picked up just before it really took off and got very big on like social media and
it did.
YouTube and
It proper
stuff.
popped off.
It really did in the last sort of week or so, and it's really, really nice to see that for Black Tabby Games. They've done some great stuff. They've clearly worked very, very hard, and it's paid off. To tie into the main theme of this episode, it's great to see. It is sort of one of those games that, like, if I didn't know a little bit about it, it would give me like a weird anxiety, not because of the horror themes, but because of the fact that, like, the looping time, it makes it hard to know. I can imagine if you didn't sort of know a bit about the game, you'd be like, does this game just end when I'm tired of repeating loops? Is there an ending?
Yeah.
Am I working towards something? And I don't know whether I'm tempted to say I got lucky in my first run, but I actually think it's more structured than it seems. I think that
Interesting.
the fact that I found a key piece of information to make me want to keep doing more loops through the story in the first run probably was not as coincidental and massively fortunate as it felt to me at the time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. There have been a few little things that have come in that have made me think, actually this is being more tightly controlled, while still making me feel like I have a lot of freedom to make the choices that I want to make and to explore the avenues that I want to explore.
Interesting.
So I don't know where this game is going, but it is very creepy and very gory, and there is a beautiful doe-eyed princess who has killed me multiple times, but also doesn't seem like necessarily the worst person in the story.
Ooh.
Yes. And yeah, basically, I mean, to be honest, the reason that I wanted to play this game more than anything was just that I am on a real kick for like slightly evil princess romances, and so this game just came out at the perfect moment in time for me, and I was like, obviously I have to play this now.
That is very specific, mate. What else have you been doing that has that same thing?
Okay, it's like, I can say the Monster Prom example because that's a pretty straightforward example. There's another example that's a bit of a spoiler for something that I don't want to spoil. There's another example that's entirely conjecture on my part about the background of a character in an ongoing game. So,
Love this.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this is just me.
All these threads.
This is just me fan theorizing like crazy. But, I think I'm maybe just at a point in my life where I'm getting back into Disney, I'm getting back into Barbie, but I'm too, like, weird from all these years of horror to just love them normally, so I have to be like, what if the princess was evil though?
But what if she was a badass and evil?
What if she was evil and there was like a goth guy who was just like, oh, I don't know, we'll hang out, I guess. That's the entire high level concept of just everything I'm into at the moment is, what if evil princess and goth dude of dubious morality? That's my whole thing.
Love that.
I would argue that when a game makes you start to theorize and make connections to other games, I know it's going to be good. That's something I've learned over the course of doing this podcast with you, is that when you start to get excited and it extends out to other things you like and you make connections, it's like, yep, Slay the Princess
like a network.
Yep.
Yeah.
A Rebecca network.
Yeah, I've always been like this. It's all I can say is I've always been like just writing my little theories down with the little, the red strings going between them. And this exists entirely in my own head. It's a good job that I've got a fairly strong grasp on reality in the actual fact of things, because my relationship with media is that anything could be a secret tie into anything, and you got to keep your eyes on it all.
Love the way your brain works, Rebecca. I think it's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be appreciated.
Slay the Princess.
So Liam!
Yes, it's me. It's my time now. I have been playing a game called Spin Rhythm XD by Super Spin Digital.
Oh, shit.
That has just come out on Nintendo Switch and has just celebrated its 1.0 launch on Steam. It's been in early access since about late 2019. So, Spin Rhythm XD, I think this is the best rhythm game ever made.
Shit.
I genuinely think that with no hyperbole, and I love rhythm games. I'm the kind of loser who bought Guitar Hero Live. You remember that one?
No.
Where it had the
Which
live
one's
action visuals. You don't remember Guitar Hero Live?
No,
sorry.
Oh, that
I mean, I was a Guitar
bloody
Hero
video
3
game.
babe.
Yeah, who
Guitar Hero
wasn't?
Live.
I mean, I think everyone was a Guitar Hero 3 babe, but Guitar Hero Live was
a-
unhinged. It was so good. I bloody love it so much. Maybe
There's a
only
Green
person who
Day
liked
one.
it. There
I
is
knew there was a Green Day one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Of course I did. Why have Green Day
So-
come up so much in this podcast?
I know, right? I haven't heard of Green Day in years, and now I've mentioned them multiple times. Spin Rhythm XD is a bit hard to explain, so you're going to have to bear with me, but I would recommend that you watch a YouTube video and it should make more sense. This is a rhythm game played in a slightly traditional sense in that you have a note lane that goes from the top of the screen to the bottom, a bit like Guitar Hero, and on that lane you get 2 coloured blocks that come down in patterns. The difference is that the method of hitting those blocks is by rotating a segmented dial that sits at the bottom of the screen. This dial has different segments of the 2 colours that the blocks correspond to, and you twist your analog stick to turn the dial and line up the colours with the matching colours that fall down from the top. On harder difficulties, it throws in a couple of different things. You can spin to get more points on certain things, tap a button in time to the beat, and I just can't tell you how incredible it feels to play this game. The sense of control you have, the sense of creating music feels as good as holding a plastic guitar. And I think that's the magic of the game right there, is that this is a game where all the soundtrack is EDM music. It's big, boisterous electronic tracks that sort of don't really sound like they're made using traditional musical instruments. So by abstracting the instrument itself to this otherworldly concept that matches the controller you play it with, it tricks your brain into thinking that you're creating this music using this bizarre object of sticks and buttons in your hands. And I think that's why it works, is it just feels fucking wonderful to play. And I've been following the development of this for a number of years now. The developers very kindly sent me a code to play this on Switch. Playing this on a Switch OLED, it looks phenomenal. It sounds brilliant coming out of those speakers. It runs like an absolute dream. It's had a bunch of content added to it through the course of its early access period since I last played it, and it could not be better, to be honest. And yeah, I found some songs through this game over the years that have become like some of my favorite songs of all time. I listen to them at the gym. I listen to them when I'm, pottering around the house. And it just always reminds me of the act of playing those songs in the same way that Guitar Hero 3 did. I can't listen to Barracuda or that Stroke song, which name is eluding me, without thinking about tapping away on that plastic guitar in my parents' living room, Christmas 2008.
Aww.
And yeah, Spin Rhythm has exactly the same effect on me. No one is covering this. We were talking before about success.
That.
This has an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam. It has since it came out in 2019. It's got a really, really devoted fan community that make custom songs on PC as well.
Oh my god!
And
wow!
No one is talking about this. Honestly, please pick this up if you like rhythm games. If you like inventive rhythm games that take a swing. If you played Elite Beat Agents on the Nintendo DS.
Oh my god! Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
Love this. I mean, that is like one of the best rhythm games ever made. You're missing out by not playing Spin Rhythm XD. Honestly, it is an absolute masterclass in rhythm game design. They could not have made a better game, and it's there. You can go play it right now if you want. Go do it. Go on, treat yourself.
There's a demo.
Is there a demo as well?
Yeah, you can literally go check out the demo and just.
There you go.
Okay,
go
absolutely.
check out the demo.
Yes.
It will.
It looks so
take over your
fluid.
brain.
It looks so good.
Yes, fluid
Like
is
the
the way of
bit
saying it.
with the you just hold. I guess, and you're holding something down, and then it goes. You're like moving the. Anyway, I'm making a lot of hand
sometimes you have
gestures.
to-
Never mind.
No, sometimes you have to hold into the. You have to hold a button down and then like wind it round.
Yes.
And yeah, it's all about fluidity. It's all about movement. And it like I say, it just matches this type of music. This sort of, you know, you listen to an EDM song and you don't think, oh, there's a guitar. You know, it's all computer. It's all synthesized. And it just really abstracts that out. And yeah, incredible game. One of my favorites.
Good.
Nice.
Oh, also, there's easy, normal, hard, expert, and brutal. So for those who like playing games on easy, even rhythm games, sometimes people don't have much rhythm, and that's okay. There's an easy mode.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good for that.
Did you play on brutal? Have you played on brutal yet?
I got so into it.
What difficulty did you play on?
I got so into it in 2019. I was playing it on hard. I could never get brutal. And on hard, I was really struggling. It's because what's in the harder levels, what's really interesting about it is it starts to play with the idea of moving the wheel in such a way that you connect different colors while spinning it. So you almost need to.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like sliding with Guitar Hero.
Yeah, literally like that. Yeah. It sort of gets a little bit in common with things like Beat Saber, where it becomes about movement as much as it is about rhythm. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic.
Enter the rhythm dimension.
Anything that's like eliciting comparisons to Beat Saber, but I don't need to worry about VR. Amazing. Already.
Yeah. It's not as nauseating as Beat Saber can be. So
Nice.
Oh my god, you're in the Accolades trailer. I was looking
Pardon?
for you.
Nice.
You are in the Accolades trailer for Spin Rhythm XD.
Oh, sweet.
I was looking, I was like, yeah, 7 out of 10 games.
Oh, yes, of course. I do know about this. They did this years ago. Yeah, it's so kind of them. It's always funny when people try and quote something I said as part of 7 out of 10 because it's a stupid name for a YouTube channel. They must think to themselves, well, we don't want to make it look like we were given a 7 out of 10. So they always they either combine it so it looks like 7 out often, so it's like one word, or they put games at the end, and like, good on them. Yeah, put games.
But it's
at the
your
end, by all
name as
means.
well. Like sometimes in Accolades trailers they just put the outlet, but Liam Richardson.
Oh my god, God bless them. Yeah,
And you're on the
honestly,
Steam page, obviously. But I just want to see if you were in the trailer.
am I on the Steam page? I don't know if it was on the Steam page.
Yes, girl, with your RPS article.
Oh, of course.
There it is.
Oh, that's nice of them. Bless
yeah.
their heart. I don't know why I decided to be away every weekend, start a new job, and launch a new podcast in the same month. I just feel like, you know, when you do too much.
Yes.
Yes,
And
Yeah.
that is the definition of too much.
absolutely.
We're flying to Copenhagen on Friday. Yoli took me to Copenhagen as a surprise, by the way, for our anniversary. That's where she took me.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
cute.
I did check. We have one Danish listener, and I tried to hunt them down. I
Oh
couldn't
my god.
find them.
You there like, is it
If
you?
you're listening
Is it
right
you?
now, I was walking along going, Goofy? Do you have like, any opinions on Goofy? Anyone?
What's goofy in Danish? Do it.
Goofing? I don't know.
Goofy in Danish.
It's bloody goofing around, isn't it?
Oh no, if that one Danish listener's listening though. No, but I want the character. Fletmul. That's Goofy. But I want the character name. It could just be Goofy.
That feels like it sounds right.
No, that is Goofy's Danish name.
Is it? How do you say
Fletmul.
it?
It's Fedtmule.
This is a beautiful
I like
website. List of Disney characters' names in various languages.
Oh, I
What?
see it. Okay. Goofy in French is dingo. I'm not. What? Dingo?
Oh, in Italian, he's Pippo.
Oh, yeah, I
Pippo.
just got to that. That is very cute. Pippo.
I like Pippo. Pippo's good.
I just got to Portuguese.
Wait,
What's
where? Oh my
What's
god.
Portuguese?
I'm scrolling.
It's not so much the fact that Goofy is called Pateta in Portuguese.
Potato.
It's that
Yeah.
2 lines above him, Gilbert, brackets, Goofy's genius nephew, Gilberto in Portuguese. And that has raised so many more questions for me. than it has
That
answered.
has
He has
raised-
a nephew?
A genius nephew.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry. Yes, genius nephew. Maybe it's on the mother's side. Does Goofy have a brother? Does Goofy
Does Goofy have a single
Does
brother?
Does
Goofy-
Goofy have siblings? What? Goofy may have a dead brother
No, not again.
or sister.
Oh no.
I can't, guys.
Goofy's
I
younger
can't. Look, I
Oh,
don't.
that hurt my lungs.
Look, I can't. There's too much baggage with this man, with this dog.
Oh my god.
Dog man.
Geefy is his younger brother.
No.
Goofy and Geefy.
Wait, though. Apparently, his twin brother is called Gaffy.
Geefy, Gaffy, and Goofy.
No, I cannot. Wait, there's like a family tree here. Oh my god. Okay. What the fuck?
I laughed
is
so
this?
hard there, I've hurt my lungs.
There's a whole thread, you guys. There's a whole fucking.
Please put
Wait,
it in.
hold on.
Put it in
There,
Discord.
there. It's like Goofy's family tree, but like a board of people talking about it, and someone's put like generation 1 at generation 2.
Gilbert. Max.
Oh, I
Oh
love
my God.
Okay,
finding stuff
Joe
like this.
Dog.
Joe Dog.
Oh my god.
Oh, I love this is what the internet is for.
This
Just getting
It really
way
is.
too into Generation 4 Grandma Goofy, since she is called Grandma Goofy and not Grandma Dog. I put her as the wife of Ebenezer Goofy. I love whoever wrote that. Your attention to detail inspires me.
Joe Dog, Gaffy Dog, Dippy Dog. Is this trying to imply
Dog.
that Goofy's last name is Dog?
I think his mother's maiden name was Dog.
It's one of the most unhinged things you've ever said.
It's great.
It is, Rebecca. I literally can't.
It's said with so much sincerity.
I think that might be his
like
mother's
family
maiden
trees.
name.
I love fictional family trees. I love real family trees. It was just such a great moment.
Hyperfixations is a section of the
we've done it.
podcast.
Yeah, there it is.
good
That's
point.
mine.
Sorry.
Thanks for listening.
Tell me that's
Rebecca,
going in, please. Tell me that's
Of
going
course, it's all going in. I'm physically hurt, right? Years of smoking made that painful for me to react to that,
Yeah,
and
well-
I'm not going to be in pain. I've bled for this podcast now.
in. Hey, I had a flare up of like a recurring chest infection this week, so I'm also here just wheezing it out. Like, it was worth it though for Goofy,
Absolutely.
God.
for Mrs. Goofy,
Always.
Every
nay
time.
Dog. It was worth it.
God damn it.
Yeah, we do need a T-shirt that just says Goofy's mother's maiden name on it. It's just so funny. It's our first ever piece of merch. It's just
Oh,
that
yeah.
quote.
It's just
Absolutely.
immediately getting us like nailed to the wall by Disney as well. I'm pretty sure you can't put Goofy.
Bring it on, mouse. Fight me
Yeah.
IRL.
Mr.
Okay.
Michael Mouse.
Michael Mouse.
Mr. Michael Mouse.
Mr.
Yes, Rebecca's. Oh, come on. Rebecca, please tell us.
Okay,
Tell us your
I'm sorry.
fixation.
I'm sorry. I want to. I want to try.
My face is so hot. I'm so
Sam's
flushed.
sweating so bad.
Oh right, this was great. This was just oh, oh right. Hyperfixations.
Oh, I'm sneezing. I'm so sorry. I've just become suddenly unwell.
You
Geefy.
shushing Liam for sneezing or me for trying to talk?
No, not you. Never you.
Definitely never you. Always me.
What if I also need to sneeze? That's right. I think I might be over it. Okay, I hyperfixate over things for a long time, and so things. Liam, sorry, I know you've muted yourself really considerately, but I just feel really bad for you. I was
I'm allergic to really good recommendations. That's
Oh
what's going
god!
on.
Oh no! Come on, hives.
It's a pre-rec sneeze.
It's a little pre-rec sneeze. Little
I don't
cheeky
know.
pre-rec
I don't know.
sneeze.
Well, maybe you want to hear the recommendation and then decide whether it's worth sneezing over.
Oh dear. Okay. Go on.
Oh.
No, it's
Oh.
I stand by it, but basically, yeah, it's
Yeah.
it is part of my tendency to hyperfixate for years at a time,
Mhm.
and so
Yep.
a thing will come back up, and it's like actually a really old hyperfixation that I just remembered exists, and I'm like way back
that.
into it.
Awakened from the amber.
Oh, that is so good because what I actually want to talk about is Sherlock Holmes: The Awakened.
There
The
it
remake
is.
That's just not just come out. It came
Incredible.
out in April. It came out in April, and I was a Kickstarter backer on it, so obviously I was like very keen to play it, but I was still playing Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1 at the time, so I only started playing it fairly recently. But it is a remake of one of my favourite, slightly post-Golden Age point-and-click adventure games. I think the original was 2007, and then it got a remaster in 2009, and then the whole thing kind of lay dormant. Well, it didn't lay dormant because they made loads of other Sherlock Holmes games in the meantime at Frogwares. But then, yeah, they decided to do this remake that came out earlier this year, and it's honestly, even though I knew I was going to like it because I like Frogwares and I like this story, I am really surprised by how into it I am.
Yay!
It's
Okay.
surprisingly I don't want to say surprisingly good. What surprised me about it, and the thing that I should probably focus on for this hyperfixation particularly, is that Frogwares have always had a very loose relationship with canon in the Sherlock Holmes games. It's always been really clear that the games are all kind of canon to each other, but they're not too worried about things like timeline. They'll put it in whatever year they want to set the story in, but they'll refer back to older games as if they happened in the past for the characters, even if like timeline wise it's the future. So they've always been like kind of whatever about canon. And then they tried to give the series like a kind of a soft reboot in The Devil's Daughter, which came out in 2016. But then they had a lot of legal troubles with their publisher, and they ended up going to like independent self-publishing, which probably makes it a worthwhile thing to talk about on this podcast anyway. But this all kind of culminated in taking a long break between 2016 and 2021 when they brought out Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1. And Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1 is a prequel, so it's a more definite kind of reboot for the whole series. And it introduces like this sort of young Sherlock Holmes who's like quite a bit different, which again is because of like legal things with the Conan Doyle estate. And so they kind of started from the ground up with this kind of new version of the character who they've now taken into The Awakened and I think into future projects that they're planning on doing with the franchise. But what I love is that they've taken that kind of like young and vulnerable and a little bit more emotional Sherlock Holmes and threaded that backstory back through the story that they wrote in The Awakened to create just some really interesting moments with things like referring back to as a character in Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1 called John, who is not John Watson, who is a different John, who is like his childhood friend. And there are a lot of moments in The Awakened because of how it's talking about kind of like Lovecraftian themes where he will kind of think about his original friend John and be thinking about like the advice he would have given or what he would do if he were here in the situation. And it's honestly, I didn't expect to be like a little bit of a misty eye over the fact that you like got so attached to this original character that they stuck into Sherlock Holmes like canon in a way that was extremely risky and usually doesn't work even in older Frogwares joints. Like The Devil's Daughter, that kid was the most annoying kid in a video game ever. I was so glad that they just wrote her out of continuity when they rebooted it. But like, you know, they managed to build this relationship that is so weird and kind of almost meaningless in terms of the wider canon of Sherlock Holmes. You can introduce it and not change anything. And yet there'll be just these moments where he's kind of like there talking to Watson and then he'll suddenly seg off and you'll see it's so good in the subtitles on screen. His childhood friend John is spelled Jon and he'll switch to which one he's talking to and suddenly he's like talking to his like departed friend through Watson, which Watson doesn't realize. But you'll be there as the player like, oh my god, like he's talking to his friend. So sad. And like I didn't expect to get that emotional over a remake of an objectively good but quite silly Sherlock Holmes Cthulhu mashup. But it's making me very excited for the sort of series going forward. I think they've already hinted that they're going to remake Nemesis next, which is my other favorite from their kind of like extremely cool golden age. And yeah, I'm not only back in, I'm like, this might be Frogwares entering like a new era of really great interconnected games in a way that they haven't really been making them connected for like a couple of decades now. So I'm excited about the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Frogwares. The TLDR on that.
I swear as you were talking, I thought it was like one of the Sherlock Holmes Frogwares games, and then you described something else and I thought it was another one. And then I actually looked it up and it was a completely different one. There are so many.
There are like
I literally
10,
did the
now.
exact same thing, Rachel.
Did you?
Yeah, I really did.
Like, oh, okay.
Okay.
I feel like you've mentioned like a few on this podcast, the old podcast, and every time I'm like, oh, is this the one you mentioned before? I'm like, oh no, they've done this again. This incredibly prolific developer making games from a war zone are just like putting out these games constantly.
I mean, that's
like,
the reason they're remaking a lot of their older ones is because it's less resource intensive when you're literally working out of Kiev in Ukraine. You know.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm looking at that list now. Oh my god. There's so many.
Yeah, it's a great series, and I just, like I say, the one thing I never expected was to be particularly emotionally invested in it. So I'm just very surprised that it's got me on that level now.
Hell
Honestly,
yeah.
that isn't an element of it that I would have ever considered. So to know that that's
True.
in there and that for existing fans, like there is a reason to return to this remake because it folds in with the other stuff they've been doing. Like it's not just a straight up remake, is super, super interesting.
Also, Chapter 1 may be the best game they've ever done as well, just on its own merits. So even if you just play the rebooted series from Chapter 1 onwards, it's so good.
Do we, be honest with me, do we need to let you do a Frogwares episode? Do you just need to get...
I
do you
was
think you just
kind
need
of
to get something out of your
thinking,
system?
I mean,
I want a Sherlock episode that Rebecca just like us going
I'd
through all
love
the
that.
Sherlock
what
Holmes
if
games.
I
A lot of
told
Frogwares as well.
you That
That would be
I
good.
had actually already written, not for this
Stop.
podcast, but just for my own amusement, a very lengthy sort of like overview of Frogwares games and how they all tie in together, and like comprehensive overview of the timeline of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. And this is what I do in my spare time.
Yes,
This
I
is
would
what
love
I'm
that.
like.
I would love
Okay,
that.
me and Liam should play one of them, and then we can use that as a jumping off point to talk about like the series as a whole and like some of the
yeah.
other ones.
Yeah.
I would love that.
That's such a good idea. You could recommend a different one to me and Rachel.
Yeah, because
So we
I
both play
played
different ones.
Crimes and Punishments, and that was like I fucking loved Crimes and Punishments. Obviously, Devil's Daughter, I thought it was all right, but I think not many people like it that much. But yeah, you could like recommend us one each.
It's
I'll be up for that.
1,200 words, the document that I just already have
Oh
on here.
my
Yes, of
god!
course.
Oh, am I like?
Yes!
Anyway, but yeah, it's good. It's real good.
Cool.
I like it a lot.
Love that.
Good.
Absolutely love that.
Hyper
Aw.
fixation. I like it when it's a long dormant one that you bring up as well.
Yes.
Rachel.
Me.
Rachel. What's your hyperfixation, mate?
So mine's relatively recent. To contrast with Rebecca's long dormant one that's come up. I've just been playing a fuck ton of indie games. I'm just trying to get through them before the end of the year. So
Nice.
I've been playing another one called Mediterranean Inferno, which is this really
Ooh.
amazing horror visual novel. Looking at you, Rebecca, again. That about these three young men who were once like in the club scene of Milan, and then the pandemic happened, and it's about them reconnecting, going to this like villa in like southern Italy, catching up with each other, but also there's kind of this like surrealist horror undertone of the trauma that they've carried from the pandemic, but also other elements of their lives, them being young, incredibly ostentatious gay men, and like the nightlife that they had and the relationships they had. And yeah, it's just, I'm really surprised. I've heard of this developer before, but I hadn't played their other game. It was called like the Milky Way Star
Milky Way Prince,
No.
the Vampire Star. I've already got it up
Yeah.
on Steam.
Yes,
because,
the Milky
oh
Way
my
Prince,
God, this looks
Vampire
amazing.
Star. Yeah, so this, I've not played that one, and because I missed on that one, when this one came out, I was like, right, I'm going to play this game. So the developer iGuys, but also the individual is called Lorenzo Rodelli. And yes, so the game is very much about their experiences over the next couple of days as they spend, I think it's 3 days in southern Italy in this villa together. This game looks ridiculous. The visual imagery is so evocative. It's so surreal. Like there's kind of like these dream sequences that the three of them go on separately. There's kind of, again, like a choose your own storyline kind of thing where you can pick one of them, and you can see their experiences called mirage. Like there are these things called mirages throughout the game where they're kind of like, sequences in which a character will be, it's difficult to explain, they'll be kind of like experiencing this surreal, almost imaginary perception of an aspect of their personality or an aspect of their trauma. And it's just really great. It's such a vibrant but also very scary look at post-COVID trauma. They like handle different aspects of like what it was like to be like locked inside for numerous years, whether that's being like touch starved, whether that's being locked in with a family that you don't necessarily get along with, the
wow.
isolation that comes with it. And it's not a game that's ultimately like really sad. It's obviously a horror game, so we'll tap into that. But it's also very wickedly funny. There are moments of complete like surrealism that I can't even begin to like go through the layers of, like peel back those layers. Yeah, this game is sun-baked. It's so good. And it's one of those games as well which you have to play multiple times. So I've just been playing different routes, getting to know different characters out of the three of them. Yeah, this is in my top 5 of the year for sure. It's so fucking good. Yeah, it might change just because I'm playing it right now and I'm really into it. But absolutely, yeah, this game is incredible. And I think what I like about it as well is that it goes in depth on queer experiences as well, and that's very obvious. Like this is the story of 3 young gay men, and it's unashamedly about that. It's about their intimate experiences, their experiences with sex, with drugs, with alcohol, with like, and I just think that's really great. Like I love seeing that, and I like the fact that it's also horror, and I like these characters are not very likable in some aspects but also very relatable in others. And it's all, oh my god, and it's all tied in with like Italian roots and heritage. There's lots of very evocative Catholic imagery, and also lots of like imagery of like sex and scandalous, and all mixed in with the religious aspects. It's like really cool. Like this game is like a concept album. I would love, like the music is so good as well. Like I'd love this to be like, some sort of, I'd love the developer to like make a playlist of like each individual character's like Spotify playlist, because I think that would just be so fucking cool. But yeah, I'm really into this game right now. Mediterranean Inferno. It's on Steam and other places. Yeah, it's just completely taken over my brain. I think about it like all the time at the moment. It's really great. Ugh.
Wow, this looks so good. Obviously, it's going on my wish list like immediately.
Yeah, same. I can't believe how intricate and layered that sounds. And it looks amazing as well. The art style is so surreal and colourful, very vibrant, and weird. And
2 interesting points. One is that I am logged out of Steam at the moment, so this is a semi-natural recommendation from Steam. More like this, Slay the Princess.
Hell yeah.
One thing. And another thing, I like this positive review. That's one of the top reviews. Lorenzo Rodelli did not lie. You can torture 3 bourgeois twinks in this game. That's really tickled me.
Like he literally describes it as like if Call Me by Your Name was like a horror film. That alone
is a good
those
hook.
2 alone. Yeah, that's hook and that positive review, so good. Oh yeah.
So. I'm gonna have to buy that immediately. That looks
if you are interested in playing this game, I think on Steam there's a trigger warning section, so definitely check that out. Just make sure that there's obviously nothing in there. Mature content, it's in the description of Steam. So yeah, just check that out before you play, because it gets pretty heavy.
Good. Incredible recommendation. There's just, what a year it's been, eh?
Honestly, I cannot.
I know I've said it before, but like, stop making these incredible indie games, everyone. Jeez.
Yeah, give us a year off. Is that all right? Can everyone stop being so creative?
Everyone have a year off. No, I love it. It's so good.
I just want a month, a week. Do you know what I mean? There's so, I cannot.
Oh,
yeah.
We could make this podcast every week. It could run for 2 hours, and it could just be us talking about games we're playing.
Yeah.
And we'd never run out of things to talk about.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely wild. So kind of like, I'm also going to talk about a game, but it's very, very, very different vibes to the one you've just been talking about. I've been playing You Will Die Here Tonight by Spiral Bound Interactive. Now,
nice.
I don't love this game. I'm going to say that straight off the bat. I don't think it's for me in many ways. And I thought it would be, and there's always a little bit of sadness to that, but I really want to talk about it because if there's one thing I do love, it's a game that takes a bold swing. And I do think You Will Die Here Tonight is some really interesting ideas, and I want to give it a shout out for that reason alone. Just because I didn't gel with it as much as I thought I would, someone out there is probably going to absolutely love this. So this is a Resident Evil inspired top-down horror adventure game where you explore a mansion full of zombies as an elite team of police officers, and spooky things happen. You solve some puzzles. There's some weird stuff going on. It could not be more of a Resident Evil homage if it literally, had a character called Jill Valentine in it. But what's really interesting about this game is that although it's visually and location-wise very heavily inspired by the original Resident Evil, its gameplay is inspired by a Game Boy Color Resident Evil entry called Resident Evil Gaiden, where you played as Leon on a boat, and it is quite often one of these forgotten about Resident Evil games where it was top-down, but combat was done in first person. So they've enhanced that idea by making the combat more like something like House of the Dead, where you're walking around this mansion from a top-down perspective, and then when you see a zombie, you pull out your gun, it zooms in to a House of the Dead style view, the zombie lurches towards you, and it becomes like a light gun game, which is really exciting as a concept. I find the combat to be a little bit lacking. It's a little bit complicated. The way that this game manages items can make it quite tricky to know how many bullets you have, and sometimes when you go into this view, enemies are already on top of you, and it removes your gun when you get attacked. It needs a little bit of tweaking, I think, in that way. But there's an aspect of this game that is just not talked about in much of the marketing material, and I think it's really easy to think that the combat is the fun twist, whereas actually this game is kind of inspired by roguelikes in a way that I think is really, really compelling. You have 6 members of this police squad, and when they go into the mansion, they are all put to sleep by this weird supernatural light. And then you choose who you play as out of these 6 sleeping characters. Each of them have completely different abilities and can interact with items. And you might find, let's say you might find an upgrade for your pistol as one character, but another character is the only character that can use that and upgrade your gun. But the only way you can select that character is if your current character dies. So you are in this really fun balance where you'll find items and you're almost like, well, I almost need to die. I need to let my character die so I can choose another character to make all of my characters stronger, because you share an inventory when you wake up. You get all the items that your last character had. The progress you've made isn't reset. And it is such a fun idea for a Resident Evil style game where death is a certainty, and
that is very cool.
You need to balance death to progress. It has some more fun twists with death that, honestly, I don't want to say. I think you should check this out. If you think that's interesting, go play it, see what you think. Where this game might be lacking in terms of combat, the way that the inventory is built up, and also the story is fine. I think the dialogue is it's okay. But honestly, Spiral Bound, you're onto something here. There's something really interesting about that death mechanic that I would love to see explored further. And I might not finish this, but I've played it for a few hours, and I think it is only about 4 or 5 hours long as well. Maybe I will see it to the end, I don't know. But for what I've played, I'm yeah, I had a good time with this. And that mechanic made my brain feel good. I was oh wow, yeah. A Resident Evil style game where death is a core mechanic. That is a really interesting idea. So yeah, been thinking about that a lot.
That's really cool. That's reminded me of a couple of things. One was the obscure games. I don't know if you ever played those. Which had the sort of large group character switching in a kind of horror. It's a sort of PS2 era horror, I think.
Oh, I recognise these.
I think I wrote a bit about it for RPS at one point. So
there's some very strange screenshots on Steam.
Yeah, it's strange. The other thing that it kind of reminded me of as well, because I haven't played that many, I was thinking of Prey Moon Crash, which I think is one of those cases where the DLC could have been a game of the year in itself, in addition to being a spin-off of a great game. Which again has the kind of roguelike looping. You need to manage who dies or leaves in what order.
What? That is cool.
But I haven't heard it done before with literally you're all going to die, so you need to optimize the. That's twisted, and I love that. Optimize the order.
That
in which
is really
characters
cool.
Die. That's so cool.
It's fun. And some characters come back as zombies as well. Like if they
Oh,
die, so you
brilliant.
find them in the
Oh
environment.
no!
Was the screenshot you mentioned for Obscure the upskirt shot of one of the main characters?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man, 2005
it's
was a
of its
different world,
time.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. That's one way of bloody saying it.
It's very of its time in terms of the way it treats its female characters, I think. But you know, it's a weird one in that I do really think that those games are very important to the sort of history of the horror genre within gaming. I think they should be talked about more, which does not mean that I endorse upskirting teenagers.
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Kind
you
of
know.
ironic it's called Obscure when it's sort of fallen into
I
obscurity.
know, right? I mean, it's like within certain, within the circles of people who are very, very interested in the history of horror and gaming, I think it's still fairly
A biggie.
well known, but it's just not, it's not kind of got the reach of like Resident Evil or even like Alone in the Dark. I don't.
Yeah.
So,
well, they went on
you know.
to make Alone in the Dark, the people who made Obscure. They
Oh,
made
bro.
that
That
Oh.
makes a lot of sense to me.
Xbox 360 one.
Oh, no,
yeah.
not that one. Oops. Oh, well.
Yeah. Don't worry, we're getting a new one next year with David Harbour in for some reason.
Right?
Well, gang, we did it. We did a podcast, and I need to go to bed. But it's been a pleasure. I'm just so comforted by these great opinions you've had, and it's whisked me away. As a friend of mine says to his kids, it's time for me to run up the wooden hill to Bedfordshire, which I think about all the time.
Aw.
It's one of the.
Why? What?
Have you
It
guys
sounds
Wooden
very
Hill.
cute.
you guys
It
not
is
heard
the
that one
Wooden
before?
Hill.
That's a really old one. That's
Run
so
up the
old.
hill
Is it?
to-
Yeah.
Up the wooden hill to Bedfordshire.
Why is
I
the
assumed
hill
he'd made it
wooden?
up.
Stairs.
That's my
Stairs.
thing. That's my thing. Yeah.
That's very cute, actually.
It's cute.
Nice.
Wooden hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what a way to end a podcast.
Yeah, just absolutely up the wooden hill. Stop. Roll the outro.
4 episodes in, and I'm doing nothing but duds.
No.
Great position to be in. Long may this podcast continue.
My God.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Pleasure to be here. Oh, can someone else just say words? I need to stop talking.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The next couple of episodes we got are going to be like, we've got an end of year roundup coming up. We've got a slightly unhinged Christmas episode coming up. So look out for those. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
Bye.
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 Indieventure is a podcast created, hosted, edited, and produced by Rebecca Jones, Rachel Watts, and me, Liam Richardson. For more information, search Indieventure Podcast on your social media platform of choice. You can get in touch by sending your questions, comments, and feedback to contact@indieventurepodcast.co.uk. You can support the show by rating us 5 stars and leaving a nice review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast provider, or let your friends know all about the good times you had with the Indieventure podcast. Some of the games we talk about on the show may have been provided to us for free for review consideration. If you are a developer, a publisher, or a PR looking to get in touch, drop us an email at hello@indieventurepodcast.co.uk. Our intro music and stings are from the song Cigarette Boat by Mark Torch. Thank you so much for listening, and see you again in 2 weeks for another episode of Indieventure, a video games podcast. Bye for now.